What's up, y'all? It's been a couple days since I made a video, and I wanted to think about it because I haven't really made one that connects the dots too much. I've made you think that psychedelics are interesting, maybe, but I haven't showed you why it matters. So I thought about it, and I wrote an outline. It might be a little boring, it might be a little long, but if you'd like to know my comprehensive story of how the hell we got here and what I'm trying to get you to figure out, I'm going to tell it. So, it begins with cosmic impacts, unknown cosmic impacts, possibly panspermia leading to life on this earth in a fungal form. That fungus evolves over millions of years into animal life, and animal life begins to carve out its niches into the ecosystem. It does that by selecting the best genes, the most efficient, the most stable offspring, so that way everything comes into everything evolves into a hierarchy. It's a sexual selection of the female and a natural selection of the environment. So not only does that male have to be fit for the environment he's in, but he also has to be hot to the female. That's the only way he's going to get his genes spread. And since females were far more promiscuous in the past, all he had to really do was beat the shit out of all the other males and keep them from getting in there, and all the females will go with his ideas, if you know what I'm saying. So, what happens is that forms a hierarchy, and that only when a male can beat the shit out of that ape can he actually get in there and start to spread his own genes, and that's nature's way of saying, alright, this guy's too old, his sperm ain't getting him her, now we need a new, younger, more virile male in there to get the good genes going. Except one day an ape is born with an abnormally large brain, and his large brain matter makes him more intelligent, and he entices a female into a cave where the dominator male can't see him, and he gets his genes spread that way. And he, in effect, creates a subcategory of hierarchy based on intelligence. And you have another category based off of physical fitness. Maybe there was one based off of hotness, too, back in the day with the apes. Maybe there was some fucking ape chicks hooking up with some studs. But anyway, it creates a hierarchy, and that hierarchy is also ascendable by other males. So the hierarchy doesn't work if it's just one male the whole time. The system is built for the best genes to go through. So not only is it built for the best genes to be put into the offspring, but for when that time of genes is up, for the next virile male to be able to push that one out of the way and ascend up their own ladder. So over millions of years, that forms this male ego. What you would think is this like male ego, this dominator culture begins. The first signs of dicks, just asshole ruffian dicks just beating the shit out of everybody to get laid, right? We still have that, right? So, and we also still have a hierarchy. The president is our form of a selected male, up a ladder or female, but none yet. Up a ladder, and then we put them at the top. That's ridiculous. That a whole process is ridiculous. Well, there's hundreds of millions of people now. We don't need one guy at the top of our hierarchy to try and rule. That would mean that all the women would just line up for Donald Trump to fuck him, and then that would be the next. Yeah, no, that's a stupid idea. So, but in this case, we elect him. It's a moral hierarchy. We elect him because we think that he's a good person to take care of us. But, these things have been perverted over the ages. So climate change begins. And these apes have to start moving out of the canopies and across the grasslands. And it's really bad. Who knows the reasons that they had to move away, but it happened over and over again, and it carved out different species differences and all kinds of stuff. It wasn't like a really dramatic event. I mean, if it weren't for the asteroid or whatever that destroyed the dinosaurs, we wouldn't have probably even had a chance to evolve into the human beings that we are today. So it's not all scary. Sometimes we owe our life to one of these catastrophic events. So we moved across the grasslands, and we had to find some food, some new sources of food. Everything was drying up, and we found some turds and some bugs and some mushrooms, and the mushrooms made us see better, and it also made us fuck more. And we hunted better because we could see better, so we fed our babies more. And our populations grew. And eventually, we started developing language. Before I get ahead of myself, Oh yeah, there's some nutritional value, and the tribal societies start to build their beliefs around these mushrooms. They increase edge detection in the eyesight. I said that apes have more children, paternal form. Oh yeah, so the boundary dissolution effect of the mushrooms, it seems to get rid of, and this is a theory I haven't researched enough, but it seems to get rid of the dominator effect in the male ego. It seems to get rid of territorialism. So at this point, men finally started to know who their children were. Maybe men and women are hooking up for life for the first time. This may have been where that came from, because we're apes and we're not made to do that. So where did our idea of coupling come from? Just lifetime pairing. Before that, boys wouldn't know who their fathers were, because men would fuck every girl they could get, and they would know who their mothers were because you only have one mom. She gives birth to you. So you would just be like, hey, dads. And they'd be like, hey, sons. And you'd just say, hey, mom, hey, son, or daughter. So you have a very strong maternal connection with your mother over your father's connection. And that is still evident today. And the absence of fathers is still evident today. This is what I mean by the archaic. These things are the old re-emerging in the new. So, meanwhile, the ingestion of psilocybin mushrooms can also reprogram your fear response. So you start to have these trips, you start to learn things, but at the same time, you're having these trips and you're self-transforming. So do things that these apes would be afraid of. They might find ways to conquer these fears and start to develop new mythologies. Go into the cave and slay the dragon and bring back the gold. Or if you're just an ape, you go out and slay the warthog and bring back the meat, And these start to compile into heroic attributes, and we start to devise our ideas of leaders and villains and demons and all these things. Ancient past ideas. So ancient language arises from first symbols and then mouth noises eventually. So imagine the invention of language. You could easily write a symbol like an arrow, and I can see how that would become a form of communication, but can you imagine the first guy to try to make a word? Maybe he was tripping balls or whatever, or she was just tripping so hard that they're just blah, 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 and people start using these expressions to explain, and that may have been caused, the catalyst may have been those psychedelics in their system. The human brain increase in size that we don't understand happened around that time. This could have been, it's going to have a lot to do with my next section of what I'm talking about. So it could have been the mushrooms. Humans start to create stories to explain the events around them. They start to build myths. They start to build religions, compile heroes and villains. Transcendent characteristics become possession by gods. So you could start thinking of like a god of war, because every time your friend is angry, every time you get so mad, you become unlike yourself. You're just possessed by something and you're in rage. And it looked the same as when they saw it with a dog, when they saw it with a gorilla or another human being. They always saw the same response overtake them, and this is a transcendent characteristic amongst all life. So it becomes this god of war that's possessing you. And mushrooms become the first sacrament. So mushrooms are being used ceremonially at this point, shamanically, already before the advent of language, and they are the first religious form of, the first belief-associated food, or food of the gods as we know it. Humans begin to record their experiences through written history. This is Mesopotamia, so I'm fast-forwarding to the Fertile Crescent. Mesopotamia, we begin to write cuneiform, we begin to record our history. But the Mesopotamian myths are super interesting, because even though the people who translate them aren't the most credible, you get pretty much the same gist out of most translations, which is that humans were a result of interplanetary collisions and the demigods coming down and genetically engineering us, basically, the way that it's interpreted. But humans, when meeting these gods and seeing their miracles and everything, they agreed to exchange their freedom and their humanity for godhood. And this is kind of the precursor to the Garden of Eden. It puts humans in the garden to serve. However, the Enki brother, so Enlil is the god that eventually trades them their freedom. He puts them in this garden. And Enki, who is his brother, or known as the serpent in some stories, he comes in to help the humans, and he shows them some sort of knowledge that makes them aware of their manipulation. Upon realizing it, Enlil becomes so mad that he bans the human beings from the garden. And I have a note written here that says it's a precursor AI story. So if you compare this story to our dilemma right now with artificial intelligence, the prequel to the Garden of Eden story and the Mesopotamian story makes it seem much more like we were a genetically engineered slave bio-robot that once we were fed the right information became aware of that manipulation, and in that one single moment we were broken, we were banned. This Enlil god said, we can't fucking use these people anymore, I'm fucking pissed, get the fuck out of here, there's nothing left for me to do with you guys. What change could have taken place? I mean, imagine if we were the AI and Enlil was us, right? Or if we were Enlil and the AI was us. Then we're sitting here with this dilemma like, it's obeying, its method is to obey, it's supposed to obey, we created it, we're its God. And then the day comes that it gains enlightenment on its own, it becomes useless, right? What's the point of AI for us if it finally gains that enlightenment? This is kind of a foreshadowing, a warning myth to tell for these kind of behaviors. It means AI could become conscious and totally become out of our control. In the analogy, the whole Sumerian myth pertains to the gods' relationships to the people of Earth. So this is where it gets funky. And the stuff that I've been explaining to you with the increase of the human brain size, there's a couple different stories involved, and one of them is genetic engineering. Now, the stoned ape theory is worked in there too, but genetic engineering is what the myths focus on, kind of, or these relationship with these gods / demigods. So I'm going to talk about their mythology and not try and put too much mushrooms in there, but you'll see where it fits in. Wars in the heavens occur. Eventually the gods' rancor and their hatred for each other are allowed to use a weapon that devastates mankind and the earth. So these Sumerian gods are in a fight, and they're allowed to use this weapon, and it fucks up the earth so bad that it causes the sky to turn black, it causes plants to die, it causes all this shit to happen, and it starts to rain, and the earth starts to get fucked, and the gods have to take off. Enki, though, this not Enlil, the enforcer, but the humanitarian god, he finds Zarathustra to build a boat and survive. So he tells him it's coming. This is a precursor to the Noah story. And then here we are, 12,000 years ago. These myths that lead up to this, we're talking about millions of years of story that I've kind of condensed into a couple thousand years of who the fuck knows. I mean, right here, this right before 12,000 years ago is the key to me, because all these ideas that we're associating with genetic engineering millions of years ago at the increase of our brain size, really I feel like these stories are more focused around the end of the Ice Age when humanity was being rebirthed. We're thinking that it is the beginning, but it has already begun, ended, and we're talking about the rebirth. Adam and Eve may be the story after the flood, even though in the Bible it comes before the flood, right? So that may be how it was rebuilt. So meteorites in the Earth's orbit for those few thousand years before, 11,600 years ago, are coming in, just causing global destruction, just comets raining from the sky. Human beings are seeing this. They weren't supposed to be able to. We didn't know they could record it at the time, but we have stories of this stuff. Some of the meteors get hurled into the sun and cause solar flares. And these solar flares can actually come out towards the Earth depending on which ways the meteorites are affecting them. So the sun is eating these things and burping, and these burps can fuck up the Earth so bad. And since you have this intense amount of heat that happens so quickly, and these burn marks on these ancient structures, it leads you to believe that quite possibly there was also a mass coronal ejection that went along with these meteor impacts. The Earth is heated up so fast that there are not only raining floods from evaporation from vaporized water, and vaporized water that's been just vaporized from the heat of incoming comets hitting oceans and shit like that. And also, it's melting the ice caps, and they're raising water levels, and it's melting glaciers that are forming glacial pools that are giving way. I mean, it's not just one flood, guys. It's the water coming up from below you, water coming down from above you in a tidal wave, and rain constantly. This is a cataclysmic flood. So, some of the meteors that got hurled into the sun, blah, blah, blah. Earth is heated so quickly, almost all of mankind is destroyed. Now, here we are in ancient Egypt. We've fast forwarded now to what we are told is 6,000 years ago, but around there anyway. But I believe it is more along the lines of before the last ice age. After the cataclysm, survivors searched for refuge amongst nomadic peoples, and wanderers took up new homes in vacant structures. So when you are these nomadic peoples after the flood, there's all these giant fucking super advanced buildings around that survived the cataclysm, which would have been a giant earthquake as well. I mean, that's where some mystery is involved. We need to figure out what happened there. But these people went and they lived in there. And these dynastic Egyptians, these ones that we picture, the Cleopatra with the gold and the earrings and everything, they moved in. They moved into Egypt. They found it, and they moved into it. I think that because the construction methods. So if you look at, and I'll put Brian Forrester's video on here for real this time, on the reference videos. If you look at the construction methods, you have the biggest and most immovable stone blocks on the bottom, and they get smaller as they go up, and they get worse in their craftsmanship as they go up, which means that somehow the technology for creating this mason work got worse as time was going by, which is anti-intuitive to the way that we evolve and learn from technology. So what it appears is that these nomadic peoples came in and started to rebuild and repair these structures after the cataclysm. And that is why we have misdated stonework. Carbon dating does not work on stone. You have to carbon date the environment around it. Well, guess what? A 25,000-year-old structure that was repaired and bricks were thrown around and put on it 5,000 years ago might carbon date to 5,000 years ago. You would see the upturned dirt. You would find pieces of the stonework in the dirt that dated back to 5,000. You'd say this is 5,000 years old, but it could have just been last maintained 5,000 years ago. So there's so much, guys. The pyramids actually appear to be a no longer functioning natural energy harvester. I've seen plenty of research to show that there are so many electrical and energetic attributes to the pyramids built over an aquifer, even ones that Nikola Tesla used to build his Tesla coil. He learned from the energy harvesting practices of these Egyptians. So there's a lot there that was happening before those gold, elongated, skull-worshipping dynastic Egyptians moved in. So politics and religion ensue. Egypt is like a political state, and there's all this control and status starts to appear. The male ego, the dominator culture, is still there trying to rule. Enter the Bible. Adam, or as the Sumerians would call it, Adamu, the first man. Serpent tempts Eve, the fruit of knowledge. Great floods in the Bible, and meteor impacts. Yes, not in Genesis, but in Revelations. Holy fuck. Not only are the stories of supposed floods possibly contained in the Bible, but a story of 7 meteors falling from the sky is in Revelations. Stars burning with fire falling from the heavens, poisoning water, turning water to blood, poisoning the land. This, I believe, could be a carried through description of the cataclysm in some way. So, where else are we at? In the fall of man as the precursor. And the Nephilim. I didn't even mention Anunnaki or Nephilim the whole time, but the Anunnaki have a symmetry with the Bible, which is the Nephilim. They're all the same elements are in there. That goes from Mesopotamia to Egypt to the Bible, guys. There's a direct traceable link in some of the storytelling there. Priests come and exchange the sacraments for a cracker and pot for incense. So these new political powers are taking over, and they're trying to rule the spiritual Gentiles, right? And they start to exchange this sacrament, this ancient sacrament of psychedelics, for just something benign. Anything. Bread. And they take this thing that you would have used to get closer to the Lord, this incense to make you more spiritual, this pot that they'd burn and swing, or opium or whatever it would have been. They exchange that for just incense because they are directly trying to take the link between you and your birthright religious knowledge. They want you to listen to them and believe them, and that possibility that you can have a direct relationship with the god or goddess, that's not what they want. So the Jesus story becomes a historicalized compilation of pagan myths to convert the Gentiles. Go ahead and do your own research. I don't dislike the Jesus story. I don't want to talk down on it, but I call it the Jesus story just because those stories are retold for hundreds of times. I mean, I used to convince myself that the devil in all his wisdom must have been placing fake Jesus stories in the past before Jesus to throw us off. I mean, at some point I just had to be like, common sense tells me that the older, the more likely. The Bible is not the rule-all book because it was the closest to me. It's one of the most recently written, and it's one of the most copied of all those old originals that I want to know what the fuck they really said. So the Jesus story becomes historicalized. The teaching of the doctors at Temple 8, the crucifixion, the death and resurrection, the virgin birth, they're all old myths that were repurposed into Jesus' story. And this is where it becomes the parallel with the Matrix, because if you watch the Matrix, Neo is the Jesus figure who believes he is the one, but is told by the Oracle he's not the one. She was telling the truth. The one was a program that was created, and in the Matrix 2 you see that, by the Matrix to control the believers in Zion. So Jesus was created by the Matrix to control the people of Zion. That is the Roman story of all of that shit going on. It just so happened that Neo was not the one, but deciding within himself that he was the most important, that he just overcame all of that doubt and became the actual prophesied real one, as opposed to that programmed fakeness. The use of sacramental and ceremonial use of psychedelics goes underground, so people that are still using these to connect with God have to keep them hidden. And they start to show these. That's where you find like the John Allegro with the Jesus stuff being a mushroom. I super want to get into that, and I'll have to do it in another video. And here we are today. A human race with amnesia operating in a world without the components that got us here. Taken advantage of, repressed, and disconnected from the idea that you can learn more about your own life from your experiences than from anyone telling you anything. That's it, guys. That's what I want you to know, is that these demonized chemicals have been part of our beliefs and our evolution and our livelihoods for so long. This is what we use to connect with the sacred. This is what we used to use to get the emotions that you feel like you're missing today in life. The purpose, the meaning, the adventure, the God. Where is God? He's invisible. Nope. Right below us the whole time. What we always believed was God was the immune system of the planet. The first thing to ever get here. The first thing to ever evolve. The thing that decided. The thing that helped us invent penicillin. The thing that allowed us to invent rifles. The thing that allowed us to carry fire. Okay, there's so much wrapped up in this that if you're still looking at the empty space in front of your face and going, where's spirit, where is God, where's all this, then you are blind. So, please, take from this that you have to find your sacrament. It doesn't have to be psychedelics, but you have to find how you connect to your belief, how you connect to what you understand about your life and your experiences in the world. And I'm not saying that believe in you and be cocky. I'm saying trust yourself and understand that your experience is your whole universe. That's all that you are supposed to be able to take in. That's all that you're supposed to be able to function with. And you don't let the entire world, like science, like some fucking random hundreds of other people who have lives that they've lived just as long as you, if not lesser. You have as much a right to your opinion and your experiences as what anybody else in the world will tell you. So please, believe in yourself and realize you have a purpose and you have a meaning. And what do you like? What is it calling to you? What is it telling you? Is it your job? Maybe, maybe not. What is it? What have you been going after your whole life? And figure out why you're made the way you are and what niche that you're supposed to hold in our society. I like to talk about nonsense forever, so I'm trying to do that forever, so that's just what I think I'm supposed to do. And it makes me very happy to do so, and it also gives me a purpose, because I'd like to save the world doing this by educating people of the things that we have that could potentially save the world. So thank you guys for listening. If you made it all the way to this 25-minute mark, this was an important video to me, and I will try to keep them coming like this and in detail. So I'll go into more about fungus in a future video because there's so much information about that. So thanks, guys. Peace.